Welcome. My name is Jeannine Baumgartner. I'm a senior scientist at the Laboratory of Human Nutrition at ETH Zurich in Switzerland, as well as an extraordinary associate professor at the Center of Excellence for Nutrition of the Northwest University in South Africa. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you the e-learning modules that form part of the ImpENSA Training Programme. So in order to give you some context, I would like to introduce you to actually the mission of the ImpENSA Training Programme, which is to address the triple burden of malnutrition that South African communities face with the coexistence of micronutrient deficiencies, undernutrition and obesity. And as highlighted, we particularly focus on micronutrient deficiencies in our training programme. Reason being that micronutrient deficiencies remain highly prevalent in South African communities, and particularly affected by micronutrient deficiencies are women of reproductive age, pregnant women, as well as young children. Furthermore, micronutrient deficiencies are also termed often as hidden hunger because the people affected are not feeling any symptoms of hunger. And therefore are often not aware that they are lacking adequate amounts of micronutrients in their diet. Furthermore, they're also termed hidden hunger because they are often not showing any signs or symptoms of the deficiencies. And that's also a reason why micronutrient deficiencies are often overlooked by healthcare professionals. And that brings us to the goal of the ImpENSA Training Programme. And that's to equip healthcare professionals with the necessary knowledge and skills to better support pregnant women, mothers, and caregivers to optimize intake of key micronutrients during the first 1,000 days. We focus on the first 1,000 days because, of course, that's a very important window of rapid growth and development. And ensuring adequate intake of micronutrients is extremely crucial during this period. And therefore also micronutrient requirements are relatively high during the first 1,000 days. So the three modules that form part of the ImpENSA program, as the previous speaker has already introduced, are actually focusing on knowledge and the skills component. And the first two modules, which are the e-learning modules, they are actually comprising the knowledge component of the ImpENSA Training Programme. Module 1 is focusing on optimizing micronutrient nutrition during the first 1,000 days, while Module 2 focuses on communication to support behavior change. And then the skills component is the face-to-face component on healthy conversation skills to support behavior change that Professor Wendy Lawrence will later also introduce to you. So I will now focus mainly on the two knowledge modules. So the goal of Module 1 is to motivate and enable healthcare professionals to integrate the optimization of micronutrient nutrition into their daily practice by providing them with evidence-based knowledge on the importance of optimal micronutrient nutrition during the first 1,000 days, and then in a second step also to provide them with contextual knowledge on how to actually prevent and manage deficiencies in key micronutrients during this very critical window of growth and development. So this is an overview of the Module 1 content. The Module 1 comprises of 3 units. Unit 1 will focus on the importance of optimal micronutrient nutrition during the first 1,000 days. So it will, for example, teach the learner why we are focusing on the first 1,000 days, why this is such an important window of growth and development, what are the causes of micronutrient deficiencies, how prevalent are micronutrient deficiencies globally as well as in South Africa, what are the short-term consequences of micronutrient deficiencies as well as the long-term consequences. Then in Unit 2 and Unit 3, we are actually more moving over to teaching about how a healthcare professional can go about optimizing micronutrient nutrition during very critical windows within the first 1,000 days. So Unit 1 or Unit 2 mainly focuses on pregnancy. So we will first introduce the main public health strategies in the prevention of micronutrient deficiencies, and then focus on dietary considerations during pregnancies, and then also provides knowledge on different optimization strategies of iron and folate intake, as well as the optimization of other key micronutrients that are very important during pregnancy. In Unit 3, we then focus on the optimization of micronutrient nutrition during breastfeeding and complementary feeding. So we will have a component or a lesson on breastfeeding recommendations, and focus on micronutrient intake and status during lactation, so thereby also focusing on the mother and the importance of the mother having adequate intake, first of all, to ensure adequate or high quality, high amounts of micronutrients in breast milk, but also to replete her own micronutrient stores that may have been depleted during pregnancy. We will also then talk about the dietary considerations during complementary feeding and focus on the optimization of key micronutrients during complementary feeding. So this is an overview of the Module 2 content. Module 2 is actually aims to increase healthcare professionals' knowledge about the theories and guiding frameworks that underpin effective communication to support behavior change. So in Unit 1, we'll focus on an empowering person-centered approach to support behavior change. Unit 2 then focuses on the factors that affect health and influence change. And Unit 3 will focus on principles of behavior change, while Unit 4 will focus on supporting behavior change using healthy conversation skills approach. So as you may remember, the third module, which is the face-to-face component, then actually teaches the learner the actual healthy conversation skills. So since we are still busy with the development of these modules, I would also like to just give you a glimpse on how we went about developing these modules and designing them. So we first started actually with input from work package 1. As you've heard, the ImpENSA program has several work packages. In the first package, the training landscape in South Africa was actually analyzed, as well as the needs, the training needs of the different healthcare professionals, which included, for example, focus group discussions with healthcare professionals from working in different fields and settings. Based on that analysis, curriculum recommendations were written that we then considered when developing the module descriptor. So based on the input from work package 1, the model descriptor was written, and based on the model, thereby we also obviously had to first take some decisions on who will be the target users of our modules, what will be the topics that we will focus on, what will be the learning outcomes, how much time will we allocate for the learner to take the modules, and what will be the actual mode of delivery. We then, based on the learning outcomes that were defined in the model descriptors, we then started writing the content. Thereby, we obviously had to make several considerations. First of all, the pre-existing knowledge of the healthcare professionals that we are targeting, also the South African context and what information is of most relevance to healthcare professionals in South Africa. We, of course, aligned or selected our content based on national and global guidelines, as well as policies, as well as existing tools and educational material that we could incorporate. And since this is, of course, an evidence-based module, we also consulted the scientific literature. We then, once we had the content written, we had to start working on the instructional design. So that's basically how will the module look like and what will the learner do while taking the module, which also includes the media development that is necessary. So there are also certain instructional design elements that we are currently working on, such as the different assessments, as well as, for example, learner activities, such as scenario-based learner activities, and, for example, interactive illustrations that are embedded and that the learner can engage with. So we are still at this stage of the module development, and the final stage will then, of course, be to implement the module on the Moodle platform, which is the learning platform that we will be using for these models. So I would just like to give you some examples of some of the instructional design elements that we are currently busy developing. These are all concept drafts, so they have not been further designed or modified by the graphic designers. These are just some first ideas by the development team. So for example, as I already mentioned, we're working with illustrations. So as part of module 1, for example, throughout the module, we will have these life trajectory illustrations that will basically accompany the learner throughout the module, and where the learner can engage with and which some of the concepts that we would like to teach to the learner will be illustrated. For example, here we have first 1,000 days trajectory, well, not only first 1,000 life trajectory, and illustrating the brain development and growth that is happening during throughout life, and highlighting, of course, the rapid brain development and brain growth that is happening, particularly during the first 1,000 days. We also make use of it, and for example, later in the module where we talk about the role of iron, specifically now here during pregnancy, also illustrating how the iron requirements, the physiological requirements increase throughout pregnancy, and then also, for example, as the learner engages with it, we then would also illustrate some of the strategies on how iron intake could be optimized during pregnancy. We also have another active learning element, which is a scenario-based learner activity that, for example, will have a specific case that we will show in this case. So we will use it to demonstrate to the learner how the knowledge that the learner has gained in the unit can be applied in practice by introducing the learner to Rosie and following her pregnancy journey. So there will be, for example, Rosie, a pregnant woman, as well as a nurse that will engage with Rosie. And those scenarios will be shown to the learner in the form of a video. So the learner can watch a video with a conversation between the nurse and the pregnant woman, really portraying the real life scenario as it could be happening in a South African primary health clinic, for example. And then in the dialogue, we will of course touch on some of the topics that we have addressed in the modules. Then, of course, there will not just be videos, there will be questions to the learner about these scenarios that the learner would have to then answer. So with that, I hope I was able to just give you a glimpse what the e-learning modules will be all about. And I hope you are really looking forward to see the final products. I would really like to acknowledge the development and design teams and the people that are very actively involved in the development and design of Module 1 and Module 2 are listed here. But of course, all consortium partners are giving or have been giving input and feedback at some stage of the process. And also the Moodle link is already available where actually the ImpENSA e-modules will be embedded. So hopefully very soon you will be able to actually go and engage with the module and take the modules. But in the meantime, yeah, I really hope that I was able to give you a good idea of what it's all about. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, as well as thank everyone involved of making this module possible. Thank you very much.